Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 6 of Truth Is, minus a couple of shorts and a couple of special edition things I did. This is technically episode 6, and I'm going to get into why I believe that Star Wars, and not just Star Wars, many the movies that you watch out of Hollywood are not God, they're Luciferian. So I'm mainly getting into Star Wars and why I believe it's Luciferian, and I'll get right back to you. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now, you knew I was going to start the show with the first piece of evidence I have, and that is this creature, this alien they put in the cantina in Mos Eisley in the first Star Wars movie. You can say that's not Luciferian, but there's a slight problem with that. It is Luciferian, and that's your first argument you might have. Is not going to hold ground, because first, he never ever mentions God in any of the Star Wars movies ever, and we're going to get into more detail about that too. Now, how many of you all have heard of a mysterious book called the Voynich Manuscript? How many of you have heard of it? Now, I'm going to go into that a little bit here too, because they call it a codex. Nobody was ever able to decipher it, and so they say, as far as we know, right? But who knows with these secret orders and these people, who knows what they know and what they think. One of the characters, one of the mysterious characters in the Voynich Manuscript, and I'll just show you right here. Now, here's the cover of the book. Maybe this will surprise some of you, maybe it won't. But some of the people who looked at this manuscript likened this small creature as a demonic entity. They called him a demonic entity, and who was based off of him? You think this guy is not Luciferian? We're going to keep going. We're going to delve into that, okay? Because I'm going to let you decide this on your own, but I'm just going to present you with the evidence, okay? I'll keep going. Now, you might call this a coincidence, but the Bible talks about a flying scroll, and basically the first thing it says is that whoever steals shall be punished according to what is on one side of the scroll, and whoever swears falsely shall be punished on what is on the other side of the scroll. So I'm not sure exactly how that pertains to this, but it's odd because in the Bible they describe this flying scroll as going out across the whole land. Now, Let's look aside of magic making a flying scroll fly like a little genie carpet all around the world or whatever. How would you make a flying scroll fly around the whole world? It says it covers the whole world, and it's a curse that goes out over the face of the whole land. And it says the whole earth in some editions of the Bible, depending on whose Bible you're looking at. The face of the whole earth. Now, how would you do that? How would you make a flying scroll go out across the whole land? I consider that it's movies. And I think that this very piece of the Bible is about that. And the guy who wrote this movie didn't write it. He stole it. He stole it from a lot of people. Not only that, and this is what it's going to play into part of what I'm telling you about him being a Luciferian, is because he took things that he said himself, and I played the interview, the little excerpt from the interview where he says that religion is propaganda, but then he turns around and says that he used propaganda in the movies to make Star Wars, okay? So in other words, he took something that a lot of people take seriously, because some people don't look at religion as propaganda. They don't look at God as propaganda, but he called God propaganda and religion, and I'll show you that now.
Basically put together, especially Star Wars, more than Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones was just done for fun, to entertain people. And there were some messages in there about, archaeology, and also about what we believe in terms of myths and that sort of thing. But the real one is Star Wars, and that was done in the same vein that what I was saying about the patron creates the propaganda, and what I wanted to do was go back to some of the older propaganda, which was consistent through all of the societies, which is mythology, because they were all, this propaganda was created independently.
Never knew a shifty-eyed person. Watch how he closes his eyes when he's asked a question that he knows is what his answer is going to be a lie. He closes his eyes. Watch this.
Where did the idea of force come from?
The whole thing in Star Wars was to take, ideas, psychological ideas,
think quick,
from social issues, political issues, condense them down into an easy to tell story of those stories. The Force basically came from
close your eyes. See,
instilling all of the
don't look up.
Beliefs, spiritual beliefs.
Shifty eye.
Go all around the world, all through time.
Lying.
Finding the similarities.
Lying.
And then
scratch your face.
An easy to
nervous tick.
Deal with metaphor for what religion is. I mean, in the very beginning,
he knows he's lying. He can't even get straight to the point.
Deer.
See?
They called it life force. They called it the Force. That's what it was. And so, where did the name come from? It came from basically life force.
You see him look off when he said that? Don't swallow this crap for 1 second. He's a liar. Real quick, if y'all go to the Star Killers channel and watch a movie called The Lee Brackett Ghostwrite Star Wars, her and her husband both shared their ideas, including the Force, lightsabers, everything. Okay? Right here. It's talking about the Force in one of their books from 1944. He got it from her and someone else. I know for a fact. He's a liar. Now I want you to understand this part. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God hath shewed it unto them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in things that he has made, so they are without excuse. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. Doesn't that sound like Star Wars so far? Now let's keep going. Therefore God gave them up in the lust of their hearts to impurity, to the dishonoring of their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. Now you think about this. What did George Lucas do with the Force? What is the Force? And now you heard him say it out of his own mouth that it came from rocks. That's what he said. But what did he do with it in the movies? What is the Force? The Force is the will of God. Now you think about this for a minute. When God created the heavens and the earth, and he said to you right there, Romans 1:20, his power, his invisible power, the power that he used to create the universe was his will. That is the Force. It is the Force, and George attributed it to the lowest form of life in Star Wars when he said it came from midichlorians, little single-celled organisms, bugs, whatever you want to call them. But that was an insult to God. You still don't think he's Luciferian? Let's go a little further. Now in the movie, the claim is that Anakin Skywalker is the most powerful being in the universe, right? But yet never did you see him shooting lightning bolts out of his hand and controlling light. Who controls light but God? No one controls light but God, okay? So God is the truth, the light, and the way. You know, and that whole saying about luminous beings and all that, I think he sort of kind of maybe stole that from God in a way. And again, to mock God, because he's mocking God right here. First, the Force, if Anakin's more powerful, when he destroys the Emperor, the only thing that had happened to him was he got his hand cut off, and then he was getting shocked by this dude when he threw him down the pit. Now, then he drops dead. I mean, he dies, right? How bad a shape was he in? And he's the most powerful being in the universe. I think, again, it was to mock God, and make God not the one with the most power, who has the most power, you know. Next, let's talk about the globalist agenda. The globalist agenda wants to put microchips in us, give us mRNA, do all this other stuff, and turn us into machines. What do they do in this movie? THX 1138. It was George Lucas's second movie after he released American Graffiti. This was even before Star Wars, 1971, which was 6 years before Star Wars was released. And I contend to tell you that he stole a lot of stuff from a lot of people, not just religion, for Star Wars. And I've gone into that with some other people about that. Take it however you will. We all know the globalists are all Luciferian, and that their idea is to turn us into machines. It doesn't make sense to think that he didn't get this from them as early as 1971, and other stuff that he used in Star Wars, he stole from all kinds of people. I'm talking about Gene Roddenberry, Lee Brackett, and Edmund Hamilton, her husband, wrote a lot of sci-fi books. He started in 1933. She started a little later. She was called the Queen of Space Opera, and he was called, I don't know if he was ever called the King, but he was one of the original. This was his book that had lightsabers in it, 1933. George Lucas didn't invent lightsabers. He didn't invent tractor beams or anything. So everything he used in Star Wars was stolen from everywhere. And again, let me ask you the question. If you were going to create a doppelganger of someone, like evil, take somebody evil and replace someone good with it, what would you do? Would you go out and buy him a new set of clothes, or would you dress him in the same clothes that people were used to seeing him in? That's what I'm talking about. He was taking things people were familiar with. Here's Lee Brackett's name in The Empire Strikes Back, because Fox knew that she was ghostwriting all of them for him and forced him to put her name in. But I understand in The Empire Strikes Back, her name's in the credits right there. But you understand that he never was going to give her credit, and she, as far as I understood, wrote the manuscripts for at least three, the first three, probably all three of the ones you knew originally that were any good. So that's interesting. So the point I really wanted to make is, despite all these things that he stole from other people And I'm not even going to, delve into that really a lot more. But the fact is that he did these things to make it familiar to you, to make you absorb it easier. Lucifer sitting in the canteen in the beginning of Star Wars in the Mos Eisley Cantina was just the beginning of it. The fact of the matter is, other things, even like 1951, the description of Darth Vader's suit is in Lee Brackett's book, Black Amazon of Mars. He stole things that you were familiar with, or in some cases not familiar with. But the point was, as I've played that interview for you, that he was trying to make himself a deity. And in other words, he was building a whole new God from you, from propaganda, as he said himself. Now, what does the Bible say? Jesus said, "He that is not with me is against me, and then he that gathers not with me scatters abroad." Now, you think about this. That's kind of funny, Matthew 12:30, because that's my birthday, 12:30. But here's the thing. He is misleading people towards Lucifer, because what ends do they fight for in Star Wars? They fight this evil emperor and this empire for what ends? Do they say they're fighting for freedom of religion in the movie ever? No. They never say that. They never say what they're fighting for. They never really say what they're fighting for. There's no to what ends. I mean, are they fighting against the empire to become another evil empire at the end? Who knows what they're fighting for, because there's no real end goal. And that's why it ended the way it did, and what they did to the third and fourth and fifth and sixth or seventh, eighth, ninth, tenth, or whatever, how many ever movies they're at now, because I quit watching them. I liked the first three until I discovered the truth, and then I stopped liking them. I haven't liked them since, and there's a lot more to it. I'm not getting into it, but nonetheless, he's a Luciferian, and you're following Luciferian kind of beliefs. I'm not saying you believe it, but I'm saying that it affects you. The United States wonders how it got so far so fast. Well, it's been in your media all this time. You look at the Golden Compass, it was written by an atheist. You start looking at Pan's Labyrinth, or this movie or that movie, or all these different movies. You start looking at them, they don't talk about God. The Hobbit, none of them. There's no God in them. We turn into a godless nation. And that's the truth, because when we spend our time, what is worshiping something? Worshiping until something is spending your time focusing on something rather than what you should be focusing on, and that's God. See, we're focusing on all these things that are godless, and you wonder how God slipped so far from us and how our nation went so far so bad. George Lucas is a Luciferian, dude. He's a globalist. End of story. You can argue with me if you don't believe me or you don't agree with me. You can leave a comment or a question in my comments, and I'll answer you if I have an answer for you. But as far as this is concerned, I'm done with him. I don't want nothing to do with him. And I'm going to tell you something else. The truth about him has not come out yet, and you're going to find out before it's over with. So you can say all these things aren't related. The flying scroll, God's will, him taking God's name and taking it in vain, him calling God propaganda, him associating God's will, the Force with bugs, him, lying to the people, exchanging the truth about God for a lie, and worshiping the creature and the creeping things. It's all like in Star Wars, man. You don't think it's related? You can think what you want. But I think you're wrong, and I think we're going to find out, and that's the thing. I think we are finding out, and we have turned away from God and the end of things, and that's why the things have gotten so bad for us. And just so I'm not only picking on George Lucas, I'm talking about Hollywood in general. Imhotep the Mummy in the movie The Mummy, that was the name of Joseph from the Bible, Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat. Now, don't you find it odd now that the mummy brought all those curses that were actually delivered on Egypt by Moses? And Joseph was buried in Egypt when Moses was there. They took his body out of Egypt. So there's something, it's like they're blaspheming God again and mocking God by calling this mummy, this evil mummy, Imhotep. That was the name they called Joseph. Joseph was Imhotep. On that note, my books are fiction, but in the end of my books, I give the force back to God, to who it belongs to. So imagine that. And I can name at least 3 sources where mind control came from long before George Lucas and Star Wars came out. So God bless you all. Have a good evening. Good night.